Hello everyone, and welcome back to Talk Helen. I'm Helen, and I'm so happy you're here today. Now, before we begin, let me welcome today's guest. Joining me today is Ethan. Ethan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Helen. Always happy to be here. And today's topic sounds really interesting because I think a lot of English learners focus on grammar and vocabulary, but not necessarily on how they sound.
Exactly. And that's what we're talking about today. Because have you ever met someone whose English was technically perfect, but somehow they still sounded cold, distant, a little unfriendly?
Actually, yes.
And, on the other hand, have you ever met someone whose English wasn't perfect, but they instantly felt warm, approachable, and easy to talk to?
Definitely.
And that's because sounding friendly has very little to do with grammar and a lot to do with communication style. Today we're going to talk about how to sound friendly in English instantly. Because here's the truth. People often decide how they feel about a conversation within the first few seconds. Not based on your vocabulary, not based on your grammar, but based on your energy, your tone, your reactions, and the way you make them feel.
That's actually kind of scary.
Maybe. But it's also good news. Because it means you don't need perfect English to make a great impression. You just need a few simple habits. Let me ask you something. Imagine somebody says, "Hi," and you reply, "Hello." Technically correct, right?
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong at all. But now imagine this. Somebody says, "Hi," and you reply, "Hey, how's it going?" Which one sounds friendlier?
Definitely the second one.
Exactly. And that's our first lesson. Friendly people usually add warmth. They don't just answer, they engage. Let's imagine two conversations. Conversation 1. "Hi." "Hello." Silence. Conversation 2. "Hi." "Hey, how's your day going?" Immediately, the energy changes. The conversation opens. And that's what friendliness often looks like. Small effort, big impact. Now here's something interesting. Many learners accidentally sound too formal because that's how English is often taught. Imagine somebody thanks you. You respond, "You are welcome." Perfectly correct. But in everyday conversation, many native speakers say, "No problem," "Of course," "Anytime," "Sure thing." Those responses feel warmer, more relaxed, more friendly.
That's true. I hear no problem all the time.
Exactly, because friendliness often comes from sounding comfortable, not sounding formal. Now let's talk about smiles. And I know that sounds strange because we're discussing English, but hear me out. People can actually hear a smile.
Really?
Absolutely. Try saying, "Nice to meet you," without smiling. Now say it again while smiling. The voice changes. The energy changes. Everything feels warmer. And that's why so many friendly speakers sound different. They're not just speaking. They're communicating emotion. Now, let's imagine somebody tells you good news. They say, "I got the job." You could respond, "Okay," or "That's amazing." Which one sounds friendlier?
The second one. Not even close.
Exactly. Friendly people react. That's a huge lesson. They react. They're engaged. They're present. They're interested. If someone tells you something exciting, show excitement. If someone tells you something difficult, show empathy. These reactions make conversations feel human. Now, imagine somebody says, "I'm going on vacation next week." A cold response might be, "Okay." A friendly response might be, "That's awesome! Where are you going?" Notice what happened? You added emotion. And then curiosity. That's a powerful combination. People love talking to people who are curious about them. Now here's another secret. Use people's names.
Really?
Absolutely. People love hearing their own names. Imagine somebody says, "Thanks for your help." You could say, "No problem." Or, "No problem, Ethan." The second version feels more personal, more connected, more friendly. It's a small change, but it has a surprisingly big effect. Now, let's talk about another habit friendly people have. They encourage conversations. Instead of giving short answers, they give conversation opportunities. For example, "How was your weekend?" "Good." Conversation almost dead. "Now, try." "Good. I spent most of it outdoors." Now, the other person can ask, "Oh, really? What did you do?" That's how friendly conversations grow, through opportunities, not through one-word answers.
I think that's where many people struggle. They answer questions, but they don't continue conversations.
Exactly. And sounding friendly often means helping conversations move forward, not forcing the other person to do all the work. Now here's something else. Friendly speakers use positive language. That doesn't mean pretending everything is perfect, but it does mean focusing on connection. Imagine somebody asks, "How are you?" You could say, "Fine," or "Pretty good. How about you?" The second one feels warmer because you're inviting the other person into the conversation. And that's really what friendliness is. An invitation to connect. Now let me ask you something, Ethan. Have you ever talked to somebody who made you feel important?
Yeah. A few people come to mind immediately.
What did they do? Were they incredibly intelligent? Did they use advanced vocabulary?
Not really. They just seemed genuinely interested.
Exactly. That's one of the biggest secrets of friendliness. Interest. People love talking to people who care. And caring often sounds like, "Really? How did that happen? What was that like? Tell me more." Those little phrases can completely change a conversation because they show interest, and people remember interest much more than grammar. Now here's another thing friendly people do. They agree before they disagree. Imagine somebody says, "I think working from home is better." You disagree. Instead of saying, "No, you're wrong," a friendlier approach might be, "I can see why you'd think that, but notice the difference." Same disagreement, different feeling. One creates tension, the other creates conversation. And that's a skill, a very valuable skill. Now let's imagine another situation. You're meeting someone for the first time. Many learners become very serious, very formal, very careful. But friendliness often comes from being relaxed. You don't need perfect sentences. You need genuine energy. Imagine somebody says, "Nice to meet you." You respond, "Nice to meet you too. How's your day going?" Simple, friendly, natural, and much more memorable than simply stopping after "Nice to meet you." Now, here's something I want everyone listening to remember. People don't usually remember every word you say. They remember how you made them feel, and that's why friendliness matters. Because friendly people make conversations enjoyable. They make others feel comfortable. They make others want to continue talking, and honestly, that's a huge advantage in English. Because communication isn't just about language, it's about relationships. And relationships are built through positive interactions. Now, before we finish today's conversation, I want to give everyone a simple challenge. For the next few days, focus on 3 things. Smile when you speak, react more, ask 1 extra question. That's it. Smile when you speak. React more. Ask 1 extra question. If you do those 3 things consistently, you'll sound noticeably friendlier almost immediately. And the best part? You don't need new grammar. You don't need advanced vocabulary. You can start today, right now, exactly where you are. And that's what I love about this topic. Small changes, huge results.
Honestly, I think this is one of the most useful communication topics we've covered because it applies to every conversation.
Exactly. Whether you're speaking English, at work, with friends, while traveling, or meeting someone for the first time, friendliness matters. And the good news is, it's a skill, which means anyone can learn it. And we're just getting started. Because there are even more small habits that instantly make people sound warmer, more approachable, and more likable in English. And that's exactly what we're going to continue exploring. Now, here's something that surprises a lot of people. Friendly people don't necessarily talk more. They simply make other people feel comfortable talking. And that's a huge difference. Because many learners assume that sounding friendly means being extremely outgoing, always talking, always telling stories, always being energetic. But that's not necessarily true. Some of the friendliest people I've ever met were actually very quiet. The difference was that they listened well, they responded warmly, and they made other people feel heard.
That's interesting, because I think a lot of people confuse friendliness with extroversion.
Exactly. And they're not the same thing. You can be quiet and friendly. You can be calm and friendly. You can even be shy and friendly. Because friendliness is more about how you treat people than how much you talk. Now, let me give you an example. Imagine you're talking to someone and they say, "I've been really busy lately." There are many ways you could respond. A neutral response might be, "Oh, that's not rude," but it's not particularly warm either. Now imagine saying, "Yeah? What's been keeping you busy?" Notice the difference? One response ends. The other response invites. And invitations create conversations. That's one of the biggest secrets of sounding friendly. Invite people to talk. People naturally enjoy conversations where they feel welcome. Now let's talk about another powerful habit. Friendly people often use encouraging language. Imagine your friend says, "I'm thinking about starting my own business." You could say, "That's risky." Or you could say, "That's exciting." Same topic. Very different feeling. Now, obviously, you should be honest. But friendly speakers tend to encourage before they criticize. They look for possibilities. They create positive energy. And people enjoy being around positive energy.
I can definitely think of people who make every conversation feel lighter.
Exactly. And that's a skill. It's not magic. It's a communication habit. Now here's another thing friendly people do. They make people feel understood. Imagine someone says, "I was really nervous before my presentation." Instead of immediately changing the subject, you might say, "I'd be nervous too," or "That sounds stressful." Those simple responses communicate empathy. And empathy is one of the strongest signals of friendliness. Because everyone wants to feel understood. Everyone. No matter where they're from, no matter what language they speak. Now imagine another situation. Someone tells you, "I failed my driving test." A cold response? Okay. A friendly response? That happens. You'll get it next time. See the difference? One response acknowledges the person. The other doesn't. And that's why some people seem naturally friendly. They're constantly acknowledging other people's experiences. Now, let's talk about compliments. Because compliments can instantly make conversations warmer. But there's a trick. The best compliments feel genuine, specific, natural. For example, instead of saying "nice," you might say, "That's a really great idea," or "You did a great job," or "I like how you explained that." Those compliments feel personal, and personal compliments often have more impact.
That's true. Generic compliments can sometimes feel automatic.
Exactly. And friendliness is all about making interactions feel real, not automatic. Now, here's another thing friendly speakers do naturally. They laugh, not constantly, not artificially, but they allow themselves to enjoy conversations. Imagine somebody tells a funny story. A friendly person laughs. They react. They engage. They show emotion. And that's important because emotions are contagious. When you bring positive energy into a conversation, people often respond with positive energy. That's why some people seem easy to talk to. They're emotionally present. Now, here's something many learners don't realize. Your tone often matters more than your words. Let's take a simple phrase. "That's nice." Depending on your tone, it can sound friendly, bored, interested, sarcastic, cold, warm. The words stay the same. The tone changes everything. That's why it's important to pay attention not only to what you say, but how you say it. Friendly people usually sound relaxed, open, interested, curious, and those qualities come through in their voice. Now, let me ask you something, Ethan. Have you ever talked to someone who made you feel uncomfortable, even though they weren't saying anything rude?
Definitely.
What was it? Usually, it's not the words, it's the energy. Maybe they seemed uninterested. Maybe they gave short answers. Maybe they never asked questions. Maybe they didn't react. And that's an important lesson. Friendliness isn't just avoiding rude behavior. It's actively creating positive interactions. Now, let's talk about another habit. Friendly people often remember small details. Imagine somebody tells you, "My daughter started college this week." A few days later, you ask, "How's your daughter enjoying college?" That feels incredibly friendly. Why? Because it shows you listened. People love feeling remembered. They love feeling important. And remembering little details is one of the easiest ways to build stronger conversations.
That's actually something I notice in people I really like. They remember things.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be anything huge. Small details matter. Now imagine somebody tells you, "I'm going on vacation next month." A few weeks later, are you excited about your trip? Immediately, the conversation feels more personal, more meaningful. And that's because you're showing genuine interest. Now, let's discuss another common mistake. Many learners focus too much on themselves during conversations. They're worried about grammar, worried about pronunciation, worried about making mistakes. And because they're focused inward, they stop focusing on the other person. But here's the truth. The easiest way to sound friendly is to become interested in the other person. Ask questions, listen carefully, react naturally. When your attention moves away from yourself, conversations become easier. And surprisingly, your English often becomes better too, because you're no longer trapped inside your own head. You're engaged with the conversation. Now here's a challenge. Imagine you meet someone new today. Instead of trying to impress them, try to learn 3 things about them. Maybe what they do, what they enjoy, what they're excited about. That's it. Focus on curiosity, not performance. And you'll immediately sound friendlier, because curiosity creates connection. Now let's imagine a short conversation. Person: "Hey, how's your week going?" Friendly response: "Pretty good. It's been busy though. How about yours?" Notice what happened? Positive energy. Small detail. Question back. Everything flows naturally. Another example. Person: "I just started a new job." Friendly response: "That's awesome. How's it going so far?" Again, enthusiasm plus curiosity. That's a powerful combination. Now, let's talk about first impressions. Because first impressions happen fast, very fast, often within seconds. And if you want to sound friendly immediately, remember these simple habits. Smile when speaking, use people's names, react naturally, ask follow-up questions, show curiosity, use encouraging language, listen carefully, and don't be afraid to show emotion. Those habits matter far more than advanced vocabulary, far more than complicated grammar, far more than trying to sound impressive, because people rarely think, "Wow, what incredible grammar." But they often think, "Wow, that person was really nice." And that's what we're aiming for. Not perfect English, enjoyable English, comfortable English, human English. Now, before we finish today's episode, I want everyone listening to remember something. You don't need to change your personality. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to become louder, or more outgoing, or more dramatic. You simply need to communicate warmth. And warmth comes from attention, interest, curiosity, empathy. Those qualities are universal. They work in every language, and they work in English too.
Honestly, I think this topic is bigger than language.
I agree. Because friendliness isn't just an English skill. It's a people skill. And when you combine strong people skills with English, everything becomes easier. Conversations become easier, friendships become easier, networking becomes easier, communication becomes easier, And that's why this topic matters. Not because we're learning fancy expressions, but because we're learning how to connect. And connection is what language is really about. Ethan, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Helen. This was one of those conversations that makes you look at communication differently.
I feel the same way. And thank you to everyone listening. The next time you speak English, don't focus on sounding perfect. Focus on sounding warm. Focus on being interested. Focus on making the other person feel comfortable. Because that's what truly friendly speakers do. And when you do that, people won't remember every word you said. They'll remember how good it felt talking to you. I'll see you in the next episode of Talk Helen. Take care, everyone.